Hey guys, John here, and I want to talk a little bit today about this whole controversy going on right now about Rotten Tomatoes, and is there a bias on Rotten Tomatoes against DC and Warner Brothers films? Because, you know, we just recently had that online petition going on that's been removed now, but not before it had like almost 17,000 signatures. There was a petition to have Rotten Tomatoes shut down because, as they say, there was this conspiracy of the film critics of Rotten Tomatoes having a bias against Warner Brothers and DC films, and they want Rotten Tomatoes shut down. And I want to just slam the book shut on this whole nonsense that there's some conspiracy theory. Now, to give you a little bit of context, I'm one of the few guys in the world who actually gave Batman vs. Superman a positive review when I saw it. I also saw Suicide Squad, and I also gave Suicide Squad a positive review. So remember, this is all coming from a guy who likes the DC and Warner Brothers films. And I'm telling you, there is no Rotten Tomatoes conspiracy bias trying to hurt or shut down Warner Brothers and DC films. And there's two things I want to look at. Thing number one, understanding what Rotten Tomatoes is. There's still this misconception out there that Rotten Tomatoes actually gives movies score. If a Rotten Tomatoes score is 73%, some people think Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 73%. Some people think that Rotten Tomatoes has a staff of film critics. Both of those assumptions are completely incorrect. This all stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of what Rotten Tomatoes is and how it works. Look, it's just this simple. Rotten Tomatoes is just a website. And then they go out and they find movie critics from everywhere. Movie critics from magazines, from newspapers, from TV shows, from radio shows, and film critics online. And then they gauge about 100 or 200 movie critics from all over the place, from every different medium, and they just see how many of these film critics gave the movie a positive review and how many gave it a negative review. That's all Rotten Tomatoes cares about. And let's say 60% of the film critics gave the movie a positive review. Well, then the score on Rotten Tomatoes is 60%. Rotten Tomatoes doesn't give that score. They're simply telling you 60% of all the film critics out there give this film a positive review, thus 40% give it a negative review. The second point is this. Do you know who owns Rotten Tomatoes? Remember, there are people out there who think Rotten Tomatoes has this agenda and bias against Warner Brothers and DC films. Okay, let's take a step back for a second. Do you know who owns them? Fandango owns them. They're one of the owners. We'll get to the other owner in just a second. Fandango owns Rotten Tomatoes. Fandango owns it. Do you know how Fandango makes money? Do you think they make money when people don't go to see, Suicide Squad, or when people don't go to see Batman vs. Superman? Do you think that's how they make money? No. Fandango makes money when you buy movie tickets. It is in Fandango's best interest for you to buy lots of Batman vs. Superman tickets, for you to buy lots of Suicide Squad tickets. Fandango, which owns Rotten Tomatoes, if they were going to be biased in this at all, they would make Rotten Tomatoes have a pro-everything bias. They would be telling Rotten Tomatoes, tell the world that everybody loves Suicide Squad so they'll buy more movie tickets. That's how Fandango makes their money. They make money by you buying Batman vs. Superman tickets. They make money by you buying Suicide Squad tickets. The idea, the notion that then Fandango would have Rotten Tomatoes, hey, let's tell everybody that Batman vs. Superman sucks. Spread the word to all of our film critics to give Batman vs. Superman a negative review, to give Suicide Squad a negative review. Yeah, we'll lose all of our money, so that doesn't make any sense. You have to be a special kind of dumb to believe that Rotten Tomatoes, owned by Fandango, who makes their money by you buying movie tickets, would have some sort of secret bias and agenda against Warner Brothers and DC films. And look, if Fandango owning Rotten Tomatoes isn't enough to convince you that there is no Rotten Tomatoes conspiracy and bias against Warner Brothers and DC films, do you want to know who one of the other owners of Rotten Tomatoes is? Do you want to know who one of the other owners of Rotten Tomatoes that you seem to think has a bias against Warner Brothers and DC films? Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers is one of the owners of Rotten Tomatoes. They own 1/3 of Fandango. They are one of the owners of Fandango, which in turn owns Rotten Tomatoes. So you're going to sit there and look me in the face, and you're going to say, hey, John, Warner Brothers has a bias against Warner Brothers films. That's what you're saying. When you say that Rotten Tomatoes has a conspiracy and bias and prejudice against Warner Brothers DC films, what you are actually saying is, hey, John, Warner Brothers wants Warner Brothers films to fail. Warner Brothers has a bias against Warner Brothers movies. That's lunacy. That is absolute lunacy. So let's put this whole Rotten Tomatoes has a bias and prejudice and conspiracy against Warner Brothers and DC films to rest, shall we? Number one, fundamentally understands what Rotten Tomatoes is and how it operates and how it works. It does not give scores. It does not have its own film critics. That's not how it works. But fundamental number two, they are owned by Fandango, which makes money when you buy tickets to Warner Brothers and DC films, and they're owned by Warner Brothers, who clearly makes money when you buy tickets and go see Warner Brothers and DC films. Please share this little video of common sense with anybody and anywhere you see this whole ridiculous notion going on that Rotten Tomatoes has a bias against DC films. That's like saying DC has a bias against DC films. It makes no sense. Anyway, that's just my thought on this issue. Thanks for watching. My name's John Campy, and until next time, bye-bye.